guest today is Rob Angel. He's the founder of Pictionary, which sold 38 million copies, and then he sold Pictionary to Mattel for $29 million. Rob, welcome to our show today. Super excited to have you.
Thanks for having me, Christopher. Appreciate it.
So I always love the backstory. We've already talked for a bunch, and you're gracious enough to share your story with some of my speaker community. But how does a 18-year-old waiter at 23, still a waiter, have an idea where 3 years later at 26, you decide to create this game that becomes the most successful, if not the most, it's one of the most successful games in human history. Yeah. How does that happen, Rob?
I have no idea.
Tell me, I'm writing notes right now.
I'm ready. I have no idea, right? I didn't have a plan. I didn't set out to be a game inventor. I think most people don't set out to be anything until they become that. And so Pictionary was just an idea, right? It was something I did with friends, and we had fun at night, but we had a lot of fun at night. And I was 23, as you say, waiting tables. And I just thought this would make a great board game. And that was 1982. And that's what everybody did. They played board games. And so I just started thinking about it, and I saw the opportunity and I took it.
Let's talk about that, because a lot of people have ideas, but one of the stories you share with me where at one point you stood for 16 hours at Nordstrom's and you sold 3 games. And that's what I call grit, because a lot of people want to be entrepreneurs. And even though you didn't plan that, but 16 hours, 3 sales, that takes a lot of grit. So tell me why you're that passionate, frankly, because you have this idea, you're selling it. What kept you going? Because it's not easy for anyone, frankly.
No. So it's a progression though, right? I call it the evolution of energy. And it takes a little time to get to standing at the bottom of the escalator for selling 3 games. So a lot of times we'll have an idea, right? You'll think of something and you'll say, ooh, I'm excited about that. So that's the first, that's the energy, if you will. That's the enthusiasm. But that doesn't really keep you going. But then you take a couple of steps and all of a sudden it turns into passion, right? Even that starts to fade though, because you get a little tired at times. But that's the action point. That's where you start going for it. But the longer you go and the more you're into it, that's when I say you fall in love. That's when you fall in love with what you're doing. And by the time I was at the bottom of the escalator selling those games, I was in love with Pictionary. But I didn't start that way, right? I didn't wake up one day and go, ooh, I'm going to make a game. I'm excited. No, it just grows and grows and grows.
I love that. And I love the fact that you mentioned it's evolution of energy, where so much of life, we're not even in a mindset of even thinking about that. Now, do you feel that the mindset you had of having this game, because like I said, some people, I remember actually I had a job when I was in my mid 20s. Actually, I was early 20s. I got fired from a job and I was working for this temp job, and I never worked for a temp. I was never a temp worker. I always had a job or I was gainfully employed. And then I remember how every, I think, Friday at American Express, they would always have bagels and cool donuts. And sometimes if it's just bagels, they didn't have the donuts. I'm like, yeah, I don't really want the bagels. And I remember this one woman say, what temp agency do you come from? And I remember she had this deep disgust, distaste, and disdain for me as a temp worker. And that was the first time I'm like, oh, wow, she sees me as a temp worker, even though I ended up getting hired as a full-time employee and getting promoted. But that mindset of you being a waiter, some people might have a waiter mentality or a mindset. Like me, I didn't have a temp worker mindset, but she saw me as that. So I'm curious, a lot of people might have an idea, but I'm very fascinated about you, because when I asked you, how long were you a waiter for, right? And was that helpful, not helpful? Tell us about that, from that mindset of being a waiter to creating this game. And I know it evolved, but still there's a certain mindset involved with that.
Well, that was the whole thing, right? It's mindset, because I put myself, pun intended, in a box. And I told myself I was a waiter. So when I came up with this idea and I saw how much fun people were having, and I wanted to just recreate that. I didn't have this plan of creating this game that was going to sell 1 million copies. It was, this is fun. I'll replicate that, and that's what I'll sell, that fun. But I still couldn't do it. So I put it away for 2 years, right? I got inside my head, I'm a waiter, I don't have the skills. So all this, we all do that, right? It's this negative self-talk. How many times have you talked yourself out of an idea? So I had to get started. So the word list was the simplest thing, right? I had to make the words. So I grabbed a dictionary, a pad of paper, and a pen. I went in the backyard and I opened up the dictionary. And all this cost me, by the way, was about, $2 for the dictionary, 5 minutes of my time. It wasn't like I overthought the first step. It was super easy. It was right there. Open it up. I write down the word aardvark, right? That was it. That was the first Pictionary word. But in that moment, I became a game inventor, right? My mindset changed. I was now a game inventor, not a waiter. But that's not exactly true, right? I started thinking about it, looking back. I didn't have the skills or the talent or the wherewithal to say, okay, I'm a game inventor. I slipped right back to being a waiter, right? It takes work to convince myself I was a game inventor. So I wrote a second word, abacus, right? It took me.
Those are two big words, by the way.
Abacus? Yeah, but you know what
Aardvark and abacus.
you know what they are, don't you? That's the key, right? You have to know. That was the Pictionary deal. You didn't have to be smart. You had to know the word. So when I wrote that second, it took me 3 years to get out of my head to write that first word, aardvark. 30 seconds to write the next word, abacus, right? So now it's snowballing. And then I wrote more words. 3 months later, 5,018 words I'd written down. It's like journaling, really. I was like journaling. I was a game inventor. So I had to do the work. You have to do the work. At least I did. And that's kept me going. That got me started, really.
And I want to stress that, Rob, because when I wrote my first book 20 plus years ago, same thing. Why should I consider myself a writer? Once you write 1 page, 2 page, 1 chapter, then you start realizing, oh, wow, I can actually be a writer, but it's about putting that time in as you did. Now let's pivot to the sales part, because again, you go from the idea to writing, because that's usually something that people don't like doing. And did you feel that maybe as a waiter, that actually did help you because you are there to serve people?
And now I'm serving in a whole different way. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Right. So, I had no idea what I was doing. Waiting tables is one thing. Making sales calls really was kind of something different. So I just used my instincts, right? I just had no fear. I wasn't even fear of rejection. It wasn't even that complicated. It was like, I got some games to sell. I got to get out there and do it. And if somebody said no, I'd be like, okay, figure out why, but then I just go to the next store. So it was just a progression of using my intuition, what felt right. I mean, man, we didn't have a clue what we were doing. My voice just went up. We didn't have a clue what we were doing 95% of the time. I mean, we were waiters and, all these other businesses. So we just did what felt right, and it just built upon itself. And I'll be honest with you, it was a blast, right? I love the sales part. I love not knowing. I love not knowing, right? People are uncomfortable with change. I relish in that. It's the fear of the unknown. It's really more a fear of giving up what's comfortable. It's really all it is. You can look at it either way you want. So it takes little baby steps. I'm a big fan of writing down one word.
That's great. And talk to us. You just said that did you have business partners, friends that helped you out? Tell us about that. The team that you didn't have.
Yeah, I did. Man, look, I am the epitome of, I know my limitations, and I accept that, right? It's sometimes entrepreneurs or even writers, we think we can do it all. That's the number one reason businesses fail. Is because the entrepreneur thinks he can do it all, or the guy can write it all. And so I knew I didn't have graphic artist skills. Mr. Pictionary can't draw. You don't want me on your team. It's no help. So I got a graphic artist, and then I got a business guy. I wanted somebody to run the business. But I tell you, there was 3 things for my partners they had to have. 1, the skills I didn't have. Right? They had to have that. 2, they had to buy into my mission. That was to recreate this beautiful, wonderful game. But the third one, and by far the most important, was we had to share the same core values. Right? You got to deal with these people. These are guys I was going to have to work side by side with, go to dinner with. I was going to have to really like these guys. And we got to be friends. Then I realized they were the partners. So I think for me, I think a lot of people do it backwards, where they find the skill set and then hope it works. I suggest you find people you like within your sphere, the people you know, people you've met, and then if they have the skill set, that's when you start forming a relationship. Because sometimes we don't have the time to find out if they were going to like them or not. You just jump right in. So core values for me was key. And for me, by the way, it was integrity.
That's
Right?
great.
That was the one.
And let's talk about this book that you wrote recently called Game Changer.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's just as relevant now than when you started Pictionary? Because now I don't even know if people play board games, but the principles of business never go away.
No.
So tell us, what are some of these transferable things that you feel, whether you're creating a board game or you're creating Facebook, it's all the similar concepts. So when you look at what's going on now with this world we live in, it's quite crazy, ridiculous, but principles never change, at least in business that people succeed. What do you feel that some things you learned in your building your Pictionary empire globally that people that are listening and watching now can learn from your experience and your expertise?
Yeah. One, you have to trust yourself. You have to trust the decisions you're making. Two, things are going to go wrong. It's very end of story. It's not even like they may or may not. So when they do, not if they do, when they do, know it's happening and know that it's happening for you, as the expression goes, right? You know, one of the things that we had was collating of the cards. Just before we're going to launch, we did 1,000 games and 500 cards per game. That's 500,000 cards. They're supposed to be sorted into the games by the printer. He couldn't do it. We had to do it by hand. And it would be like taking 9,580 packs of playing cards, through your little brother throwing in the middle of the room, mixing them up and running away. And you have 6 days to put these cards into these boxes. We got it done, right? We got it done. And on the outset, it was like the worst thing that ever happened. I mean, I'm going crazy. This is terrible. We can't do it. But guess what? The upside, we could trust each other. We had each other's back. My partners and I got to know each other better. So this terrible, terrible moment turned into one of the best things for the future of our business. So things are going wrong all the time. 2, 3, I guess, find mentors. Find mentors. Man, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. Like I said, we had no idea what we were doing half the time, but we talked to experts and we actually contributed to them, right? It's not just a mentor giving and giving. You have to give to them as well and collaborate. And so there's a lot of moving parts, but mentors are really key to helping move forward.
That's great, Rob. Now, as you're writing this book and sharing your story, now you're speaking more. What do you hope that your audience members, your clients, your customers really take from your story? You've said a lot of things, but we're about at the end of our show. What's the one singular thing that you hope that your clients really learn from you? Because when it's all said and done, I can clearly tell you have a great heart, very intuitive. And what's the thing that you hope that they feel from your message?
There's no one way or right way to do anything. There's just so many systems. There's so many follow this and this will happen. It doesn't work that way, in my opinion, for me, right? It's intuition. It's getting there how you're supposed to get there with your new marketing plan, with your new business plan, with your new venture. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be this big thing. We all get there differently. Mark Cuban, Rob Angel, Sarah Blakely, you. So don't look at somebody else and say, that's what I want to do and how I want to do it. Just trust yourself, be authentic, do what works for you, and you'll get to where you're supposed to be. I guarantee you.
That's awesome, Rob. I actually have one more question, given that you mentioned intuition many times.
Yeah.
How can we actually nurture our sense of trusting ourselves and having the intuition in a day-to-day level? What's a practical thing that you feel that has allowed you to really trust that sense of like inner compass?
It's awareness. You have to be aware when you're feeling right or it's feeling wrong, or you'll know. This isn't rocket science. It's not, oh my goodness, I didn't know. You know. So just be aware and pay attention. And when that feeling comes up, good or bad, both are really great, then just pay attention and go, okay, how do I want to deal with that? How do I want to deal with this? Do I want to go forward or ignore it or say no? No wrong answer again. So just be aware in all business that you do, all things that you do, and you'll be okay.
Rob, that's great advice. Thank you so much for being on our show today. How can our guests stay in touch with you, buy your book, and hire you as a speaker?
Get the book. Oh, I just happen to have a copy right here. Game Changer on Amazon. The Rob Angel on all social media, and you can find me all there.
Great. Rob, thanks so much for being on the show. Have a great day.
Hey, appreciate it. Thank you.